What's up everybody, it's Sean here, and today's video is going to be a little bit different. If you're even a little bit interested in sneakers these days, I'm sure you guys know how popular the 2010s era running shoes are, as they've become to many people the sneaker of choice when it comes to casual and lifestyle use. So pairs like the New Balance 2002R, the Asics Gel-1130, and two of my personal favorites, the Nike Zoom Vomero 5 and the Asics Gel-1130. So these are two pairs that I recently picked up, but they're definitely not my first time that I picked up either of these sneakers. I have quite a few pairs of both already in my collection, and they're pairs that I find are perfect as a daily, everyday use sneaker, which gives you a ton of comfort. So for today's video, I wanted to give you guys a head-to-head comparison between these two silhouettes, break down the different components, and evaluate based on my opinion, which of the two does better. And I know either of these shoes could be better compared to other silhouettes. I know a lot of people were saying, why don't you compare the Zoom Vomero 5 to the Gel-1130? But that's purely because these two are some of my two favorites, and they're realistically two of the models that I would truly consider to be used as an everyday leave-by-the-door sneaker. The Gel-1130, I actually love that sneaker as well, but for other reasons which maybe I'll get into in another video, I just prefer the Gel-1130 more so as my everyday beater. So this in my hand is the Zoom Vomero 5 in the Pure Platinum and Photon Dust colorway, and this one right here is the Gel-1130 in the white and cloud gray colorway. And both pairs are pretty much general releases. They're basically sitting in full size runs, which means there's absolutely zero hype. This is purely about the comfort, the aesthetic, and your personal preferences. So jumping right into the details, first off, pricing. This is the biggest difference if I had to say between the two. The Zoom Vomero 5 clocks in at 210 Canadian dollars or 160 USD. That's honestly not cheap for an everyday beater sneaker, especially when you compare it to the Asics Gel-1130, which comes in I believe at around 95 or 100 USD or 130 or 140 Canadian dollars depending on the retailer. So that's a big difference. The Zoom Vomero 5 is about 60% more expensive than the Asics Gel-1130. So let's dive into the rest of the details and see if that price difference is justified. So first off, in terms of the materials on both of these shoes, pretty much all the materials used on either sneaker are just synthetic materials. So we have these mesh bases with a bunch of synthetic leathers, TPUs, and fuse overlays. So this comes in at a draw. There really is no noticeable difference in material quality between the two. In terms of the uppers of the sneaker and specifically how much support they give your foot, one thing I definitely noticed is that the 1130 is noticeably more airy, it feels more breathable, and it feels more lightweight as well. To me at least, it feels like my feet have more room within the shoe. It just feels a bit more free-flowing. But when you compare this to the Zoom Vomero 5, the upper on this shoe, I feel like the Zoom Vomero 5 has more support and it hugs your foot a little bit better. So for example, we have this TPU midfoot cage, which gives you additional support on both the lateral and medial sides. And even the tongue on the Zoom Vomero 5 is gusseted, which helps to contain and wrap around your foot a little bit more snug. But despite the fact that the Zoom Vomero 5 has this visible TPU heel cup on the back, it actually feels softer and not as supportive as the internal heel cup within the Gel-1130, which felt a little bit more firm and more stiff. Next up, in terms of the support as far as the outsole goes, so I noticed that the Asics felt a little bit more stable. It just felt a little bit more centered and stable to the ground. It didn't have as much of a dynamic feel underfoot. Whereas for the Zoom Vomero 5, even in just the way the midsole is shaped, it felt like it had a bit more of a drop from heel to toe, and even the height on the midsole felt a little bit more stacked on the medial side compared to the lateral side. And in addition, we have these grooves along the midsole, which add to that whole dynamic, flexible feel of the shoe. And when you look at the outsole, the rubber itself, the outsole is segmented on the Zoom Vomero 5, whereas on the Gel-1130, we have less flexibility here as the rubber isn't as segmented. Each shoe has their own take of a TPU shank plate, so the Asics pair utilizes their Trustic technology, which is a much larger plate and it's noticeably more stable and rigid across the midfoot. Whereas the Zoom Vomero 5, we have a much smaller plate here on the medial edge, so as a result it gives the shoe more flexibility but less midfoot support. Moving on to the insoles on these shoes, so if I compare them side by side, you'll see how the insole on the Asics pair is a little bit thicker compared to the insole on the Nike pair, but the foam on the Vomeros feel a little bit more dense, whereas on the 1130s, it feels a little bit softer and it's thicker but it feels more spongy. So probably the biggest question between these two that people are curious about is the underfoot comfort. And in my opinion, the 1130s have a softer feel underfoot. It's not a significant difference, but it definitely felt a little bit more pillowy underfoot compared to the Vomeros. At the same time though, while they are a little bit softer, they feel a little bit lower to the ground, and the midsole on the Gel-1130 is comprised of EVA foam with a small insert of Asics gel technology which sits underneath the heel. When you compare this to the Zoom Vomero 5s, in comparison they have much more of a bouncier feel. So the midsole on this pair utilizes Cushlon along with Zoom Air both underneath the forefoot as well as underneath the heel. So Zoom Air gives you that snappiness, and it gives you more of that energy return and rebound, which is translated when you wear these shoes. So it comes down to personal preference on what type of cushioning you prefer, something a little bit softer, more pillow-like, or something that has a bit more of a bouncy feel underfoot. There's really no right or wrong answer. Oh, and before I forget, in terms of the padding around the inner collar, to me the Zoom Vomero 5s had a bit more padding around here, which also adds to the comfort factor to this shoe, whereas when you compare it to the Asics Gel-1130, the padding here seems a little bit thinner and a little bit more minimalistic. Last but not least, in terms of the fit of both of these shoes, so first off, for both pairs, I find them to fit true to size. However, the Zoom Vomero 5s are definitely the more snug of the two, whereas the Gel-1130s feel noticeably more loose and they're much more wide foot friendly. So the toe box on the Gel-1130, it's noticeably wider, it has less of a taper, but again, even though my feet are a little bit on the wider side, going true to size for both pairs fit me perfectly fine. So if you're someone who has a really wide foot and you don't like a snug fitting shoe whatsoever, then I would definitely point you to the direction of the 1130s. So that pretty much breaks down my comparison between these two models. A lot of the differences between these two doesn't necessarily make one shoe good and one shoe bad. A lot of it comes down to personal preference on how you like your shoes to feel, how you like your shoes to fit. If you're asking me to pick one, I think another thing you have to factor in is the design of both of these sneakers. To me, I prefer the look of the Zoom Vomero 5s. It has more of an intricate design on the exterior, whereas the Gel-1130s has more of a minimalistic look. So again, that's a personal preference thing. If you like your shoes to have a bit more of an understated, minimalistic look, then the Gel-1130s would win here. But if you like more of that Y2K sort of vibe and less of that classic dad shoe look, then I think the Zoom Vomero 5 wins it in that case. So again, for me, I would go with the Zoom Vomero 5 for reasons including my preference for its physical appearance on the exterior, and I prefer more of that snappy, responsive feel underfoot as opposed to the slightly softer feel underfoot of the Gel-1130. But again, keep in mind the price differences on both of these pairs. This one at 210 Canadian dollars versus 130 or 140 Canadian dollars, that's a very big difference, which I think is part of the reason why a lot of you guys asked me to compare the Zoom Vomero 5s to the Gel Kayano 14. Those ones are priced more similarly. But for the purpose of this video, if you're looking for a shoe with extreme comfort at a very reasonable, very affordable price point, then the Gel-1130 wins in that case. Interestingly enough, I put up a poll on my Instagram stories asking people which of these two silhouettes do you prefer, and it actually came down to an exact tie. I believe there's something like 361 votes for either shoe, so it ended up being an exact tie, which is absolutely wild. That just goes to show you how popular Asics are these days, that it comes to a point where a vote against a Nike shoe ends up being a tie. So leave your thoughts down below. Let me know between the Zoom Vomero 5 and the Asics Gel-1130, which of the two models do you guys prefer? The Zoom Vomero 5 releasing originally in 2010 versus the Gel-1130, which I believe debuted in 2008. Both pairs extremely popular these days. So again, there really is no right or wrong answer. Leave your thoughts down below and let's talk about it. As usual though, if you guys enjoyed this video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet. You can follow me on Instagram at esco8, check me out on X at sean.go spelled out, and visit my website at seango.ca. So thank you everyone for watching. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this review. I enjoyed making it for you. Appreciate the continued love and support, and I'll catch all of you in my next review.